Hello, welcome to Singapore Geospatial Week Plus 2020, an event organized by GeoWorks, Singapore Land Authority's Geospatial Industry Centre. So today we are excited to introduce Paul from Ordnance Survey to share more about geospatial trends across the UK. So if you have any questions during the webinar, please leave them in the Q&A box and we will answer them at the end of the webinar. So thank you, and without further ado, I'll pass the presentation over to Paul. Paul, please.
Hey, afternoon. Can you see my slides okay?
Not yet.
Okay. I'm trying to share my screen.
Are you able to share your screen?
Yeah, I'm sort of clicking on the share screen button and doesn't seem to be working.
Maybe my colleague can help to share the screen.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
Paul, can you see the slides now? We have already shared.
You can see the slides, can you?
Yeah, can you see the slides?
I can see them. Can you see them as well?
Yes.
Great. Okay.
Yeah, you could proceed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry about that. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Paul Cruddace. I'm the Head of Innovation and Geovation at Ordnance Survey, which means I look after research through to innovation, early product development, and also our accelerator startup hub in London, Geovation. So my talk this afternoon is really going to focus around the geospatial development trends in the UK. But the UK is are my slides changing? Have my slides changed? Hi, can you see my next slide?
Yes, we can see.
Fantastic. Sorry about that. Yeah, there's just a few technical issues. So Ordnance Survey is the national mapping agency of Great Britain, and we collect geospatial data for a wide variety of customers within GB. We also have a strong international presence. So in the UK, we are custodians of the geospatial database, which includes about 500 million geographic points. And our sort of area of geography is England, Scotland, and Wales. And we make about 20,000 changes to that database every day. But we also have a presence across the world. So we're working with many countries to help them develop their expertise, to help them develop their geospatial capability and their mapping capability. And this could be cities, regions, or countries. We have a number of offices across the world, and in the Asian Pacific region, our office is based in Singapore. And our team there are Catherine Chong, Dan Sheeran, and Andy Tan. And they do a fantastic job at helping customers understand the value and where their challenges are, and how geospatial data can be play an important part and be impactful. So I just thought I'd throw in a couple of very brief examples before I sort of carry on with my talk. So a couple of very brief projects that we've done in Singapore was working with the Government Technology Agency to develop the 3D modeling capability to create connectivity between population, businesses, and government. And that was really around working on the data collection processes and how we develop the specification and product flow lines to help develop a comprehensive 3D spatial data framework. And then the second one was around how I was developed a city GML model. So this is a model that develops that enables a computer to accurately model a 3D environment. So that could be a 3D environment of a building, for example. So on to trends and developments. So as the global economy is likely to be characterized over the next numbers of years by an increased volatility, both in terms of technology and also in terms of economics, things are moving incredibly fast. And these are characterized by a number of sort of macro trends. And these are some examples which are defined by the United Nations. And every nation will respond to these in a different way because they have their own local characteristics. But I think whatever happens, each nation will undergo a transformation over the next 10 years because there is so much happening. So from those sort of global trends, we move down into a more of a geospatial view of the world. And I've taken as sort of my basis of this talk, a report that's just come out from the United Nations Committee of Experts on Global Geospatial Information Management, the UNGGIM. And this report has just had a refresh. It's just come out with its third version. And I'd recommend anybody to have a look at that, and the link is down there on the bottom. But what it does is really sort of go out across the world to understand what those geospatial trends are and how the geospatial industry is reacting to those sort of macro level trends. So here are some of those trends from within that document. And what I wanted to do is these are described at a global basis, but I'll sort of bring in some examples from a UK perspective. And what I'm going to do is sort of hone in on 8 areas which maybe aren't, some of which are covered, but generally, and have been covered during this conference, but many of which have not. So I'll sort of give a bit of a flavour as to what those trends are and also what is happening in the UK. So first of all, there's been a number of talks during this conference around autonomous vehicles, and autonomous vehicles absolutely need geospatial data, whether that's technology in terms of sensor technology or mapping to get around. But those cars, as they move around our environment, are actually amazing surveying pieces of equipment, and we should and could be using those to actually help us build our view of what's happening in the landscape, and to give us a much more detailed view of the landscape. And here's just a slide which shows some work that we're doing with a company called Mobileye, which is an Intel company. And this project is looking at how we can use sensors in the car that are generally used to enable the car to understand its environment and feed that information back to the driver. And we're actually using those sensors to detect other things. So that could be lampposts, it could be potholes, or just general street furniture that the car sees as it drives along down the road. And we're working with Mobileye and their technology to improve the accuracy of this capture, and then to work with customers to understand how this captured data can then be stored within an organization's database. But a really sort of powerful way at just using sensors that are on vehicles anyway to collect more data about the environment. So the second area is around the field of quantum technology. Now, this is not an area that I am an expert in, but quantum technology basically use qubits, which are completely different to the traditional bit. And the power of quantum technology is really in how the computer storage scales exponentially with the number of bits. And we're involved in a project that's developing with a number of organizations in Great Britain, which is looking at how quantum gravity sensors can detect underground assets. Now, this is something that is still quite a way off, probably 5 to 10 years away. But understanding where assets are under the ground is really difficult without actually digging them up and actually seeing them. So quantum gravity sensors could actually be a way of really quickly identifying where those assets are and what they are. And it is an exciting technology, but it is a little way away. Moving on to high resolution Earth observation data. There's been at least one talk during the conference on satellite-based imagery. But as a general trend, we're increasingly moving to the place where we've got huge constellations of satellites. And these satellites will give us amazing coverage. And Planet spoke earlier in the conference, and they're looking at having a revisit time of 12 times a day, which when you're trying to understand change in the environment is incredibly powerful. But these satellites are also pushing the boundaries in terms of resolution, and current resolution of 30 centimeters is going to increase over time. The other trend that we're seeing within Earth observation is how that data is then used and analyzed. Because it's no point just getting a picture, you need to actually understand what's happening in that picture. So the European Space Agency have just launched their FISAT satellite, which actually has this artificial intelligence on board. So you don't get down the image, you get down the analyzed data. So that means that the computational power and facilities that you need on the ground are tiny. And you're actually getting real-time valuable data that you can use within your application, not just an image. So some really interesting developments within Earth observation that are happening now and will continue over the next few years. And then building on top of satellite-based platforms, we're seeing high-altitude pseudo-satellites, HAPS platforms, which fly at 20,000 meters. They're not here now, but in the next 3 to 5 years, we could be seeing these platforms in our skies and providing a gap between the aerial and satellite-based. So moving on to machine learning and deep learning. So once we've got these images, we need to be using these sort of automation techniques to extract the geometry and also the attribution of what's happening in the landscape. And here's an example of an area in Guyana. There's some work that Ordnance Survey did down there. And here we're seeing we're sort of automatically extracting a very rich view of what's happening down there in the landscape. This will build and this will enable people who are currently manually interpreting that data to now be used on a much more important and sort of advanced tasks rather than just sort of eyeballing imagery. So another trend is really around I trained as a surveyor, but actually at least half of the people in my team now are data scientists and analysts and computer scientists and people who have data visualization skills. So this and that allows much richer interpretation of the data. So we have to work with these other communities and bring these other communities into our field. So we're getting a much more intelligent, fluid view of the landscape. I guess I'm also seeing partnerships growing within our industry, and you know we're all our countries are under stress and pressure at the moment. What I would see is partnerships growing, so companies, academia, governments working together to solve problems and create opportunities rather than single entities trying to go at themselves. And also technology and developments enable companies to get to market an awful lot quicker. So the seventh major trend is really around data ethics and privacy. And as we bring more data together with a geospatial context, we need to be able to ensure that data is safeguarded and the people whose data that's about are safeguarded and they have the confidence in that data. So this is a theme that's growing within our industry. And Ordnance Survey has its own initiative, which is funded by the Omidyar network, which is really looking at how we understand data ethics better. And we're working with many other organizations, including Ethical Geo, on a charter, which is looking at best practice for geospatial data ethics. And in the UK, we've got the Centre for Data Ethics and Innovation, which is an advisory board set up by the UK government that looks at data ethics across the sphere, but also obviously brings in geospatial data as well. So an incredibly important area and one that we need to be very focused on. So moving on to the last trend, which is really around incubators. So incubators are basically places where startups and early stage businesses can go for support. And that could be support in terms of technology or in terms of finance or in terms of linking through into customer communities and other communities that can help develop their solution. Excuse me. So in the UK, we have a number of incubators in the geospatial field. Ordnance Survey has a Geovation accelerator hub, which is based in London. And we've been working with like hundreds of startups over the last 5 years and help nudge them into understanding that customer need and where the value is with that customer, and then supporting them in terms of developing their early products and then linking them into finance. So that helps them grow, which is fantastic. But it also helps develop the ecosystem, so the geospatial ecosystem, And on the back of that, we create jobs, and then we create wealth within our country. So everybody wins. So from that sort of early stage support, we've now got many companies that are now really sort of growing and having a huge impact across the country. So just a very brief example, one of those companies that came through Geovation we're still very connected with is a company called Flock. So Flock works with drone organizations, so companies that fly drones, and enables them to get insurance just for the very specific flight that they're doing. So a drone operator will contact, will get on the app, they'll say, I'm working in this area, and Flock will contact the insurance companies, come back with a price, say that'll cost you $50 to fly that specific bit of geography. Flock signs up, them up, and then that drone operator is going, and that'll take a matter of minutes. So very quickly, drone operators are getting out on the field and can operate, and this is really turning on its head the insurance industry, not just for drone operators, but also the wider insurance industry, this sort of very specific, very geographically orientated way of getting insurance, which means you don't need insurance for all the risks you could ever imagine in the world. You're very, very targeted. And Flock are now growing. They're now moved from a team of 1 to a team of 15 and are very successful. So that's fantastic. So my last slide is really about what's happening in terms of the UK Geospatial Strategy, which was developed by the Geospatial Commission, which is the expert committee in the UK, which develops a strategy and promotes best practice in terms of geospatial data. So the Geospatial Commission has brought together all these global trends and all these geospatial trends and come up with a strategy for how the UK is going to respond or could respond to them to enable the economy to grow, to understand the environment better, to help develop transport infrastructure. So within this strategy, we've got 4 missions, which are around promoting and safeguarding location data, improving access, enhancing our capability, and also enabling innovation. And you can see from those 4 missions are very closely tied into some of those examples of geospatial trends that I touched on. So thank you very much. A very quick run through of global geospatial trends, how they're linked through into the UK, and also how the UK is responding to them in terms of the UK Geospatial Strategy and all the organisations like Ordnance Survey that are working with the for the Geospatial Commission. It's clear that the pace of change is very rapid, and it's only going to get more rapid, and that's from a technology, economic, political, and risk, etc. point of view. And it's clearly an interesting, very exciting time to be within the geospatial industry. I've only been able to touch on a few of those trends, but hopefully given a little bit of a flavour for what's happening in the UK and also the broader context. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Is there any other questions from the attendees? Oh, I think we have a question from Alex. Okay. He's asking if the Geovation PropTech incubator annual, and when does it run?
Okay, so the Geovation incubator has been running for about 5 years. And we've got a team of 15 people that work out of the hub in London and also to some degree down in Southampton. And we work with, so we bring startups in. So we bring a number of startups in two cohorts twice a year. But also we keep in touch with all those startups because what we are doing is sort of building that community. So we don't just say goodbye at the end of their term. We keep them within the family, and they help the next tranche of startups that are coming through. And the community just builds, which is fantastic.
Thank you. Is there any other questions from the attendees? Oh, I think there is one more. So, who can I work with on 3D mapping for Singapore-based UAV research?
Okay. So I would get in contact with our local team based in Singapore. So probably the easiest contact is Andy Tan. So that's andy.tan@os.uk, and Andy will be really happy, pleased to have a conversation.
Yes, I think Andy has also indicated his email under the chat. So
Okay.
if you have any, if the attendees have any other inquiries, you could contact Andy at the email address for more information. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for today, Paul.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak at the conference.
No
And
problem.
thank you very much.
Thank you. So
Thanks.
thank you
Bye.
everyone for tuning in to the webinar. So before you leave, we also have a QR code for you to scan for our next webinar. Thank you, and we look forward to see you again.